Welcome to the deep dive. Today we are wading into a truly frustrating topic, the astonishingly high failure rate of modern automation projects.
And we're talking about the whole spectrum here.
Everything. Robotic process automation or RPA, sophisticated AI initiatives, and even things that should be straightforward, like infrastructure as code.
Right. For years, automation's been sold as this silver bullet for efficiency. It promises speed, accuracy, huge cost savings.
And businesses have been buying in big time.
Oh, absolutely. The stakes are just enormous. We're talking about businesses collectively pouring over $12 billion a year into these efforts.
$12 billion. And here is the jaw dropper that should stop every executive in their tracks. Approximately 70% of those projects, they just fail to deliver the expected results.
70%. I mean, just think about that. For every 3 projects a company starts, on average, 2 of them are effectively flushing money right down the drain.
I think it's worse, doesn't it?
It does. If you start to break it down by the type of technology, the numbers become truly alarming. For, complex IT automation or those big cutting-edge AI projects.
The ones that get all the press.
Exactly. For those, failure rates are often cited as high as 90%. 90. Even RPA, which is supposed to be the easy stuff, the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
It still fails to deliver about half the time.
When people hear these figures, the immediate reaction is to blame the usual suspects.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the budget must have run over, or the tech was just too complex, or maybe, we just didn't have the leadership buy-in.
The standard excuses. But we challenged that.
We did. We dove deep into the source material on this.
And the core finding, and this should really transform how every leader approaches automation, is this. The primary reasons for failure are overwhelmingly organizational, procedural, and just fundamentally human.
Not the technology.
It's almost never the technology. The automation tech itself, the RPA bot, the Terraform script, the AI model, it often works perfectly. But the flawed system it's running on, well, it just multiplies the existing dysfunction.
Okay, let's unpack this. This brings us to the central, shocking revelation we found across almost all our sources.
This is the big one.
The single biggest reason projects crash and burn is this almost irresistible impulse to automate broken processes instead of fixing them first. You are, quite literally, digitizing dysfunction.
The statistics on this are they're staggering. Industry analysis estimates that 73% of failed automation projects fall squarely into this broken process automation trap.
So 3/4 of the time, the problem wasn't a bad robot, it was a bad blueprint.
A bad blueprint. That's a perfect way to put it.
So what makes this mistake so seductive? Why do people keep doing it?
It's the logic of the automate what we do mentality, or what some experts call the mirror image fallacy.
You just copy what you see.
Exactly. You watch a manual process, you map out every single excruciating detail, and then you build a bot that replicates that exact workflow. It seems logical. It seems faster.
And easier, I imagine.
Way easier than dealing with the political cost and the resistance that comes from actually changing the process itself.
Right. Because if you say, hey, we need to eliminate these 3 redundant approval steps, you're stepping on someone's toes.
You're starting a turf war. Those approvals exist because a manager fought for them 15 years ago, or they're a Band-Aid for some other problem nobody ever fixed. Redesigning a process. I mean, that takes time, it takes consensus, it threatens power structures.
But just automating the mess as it is, that feels fast. You can point to the code and say, look, we did something.
We automated this step. But if that process has been around for years, maybe decades, it's guaranteed to have all this complexity, these weird workarounds and exceptions that only exist because humans were doing the work.
And automating those flaws just makes the inefficiency run faster.
A lot faster. You end up with brittle, slow, frustrating automation, all because the underlying logic was just fundamentally bad. The system is doing its job perfectly, but its job was defined as following 10 unnecessary steps.
Can you give us a really concrete example? The story about invoice processing we found really brings this to life.
It's a classic, a perfect disaster. So imagine this mid-sized company struggling with accounts payable.
A common problem.
Very common. So they decide to automate invoice processing. They spend 6 months, a lot of money, on an RPA project, and they successfully automate the really complex parts, pulling data from different invoice formats, getting internal approvals, the final electronic payment.
So on paper, that sounds like a big win.
Yeah, it sounds great. But they never questioned the underlying human steps that were part of some legacy corporate policy.
Uh-oh.
The company's old rules dictated that after the clerk entered the data, which the bot now does, They still had to manually print the invoice.
Print it?
Print the invoice, walk the paper copy to the finance director's office for a physical wet ink signature.
You're kidding me.
And then walk back to their desk and scan the signed document before the automated payment could proceed.
Wait, so the whole goal was to get rid of manual work, but they kept a core step that required a physical paper pilgrimage through the office.
Precisely. The automation worked perfectly in its little silo. It digitized the data entry. But the overall result was a slower, more expensive, and way more frustrating hybrid process.
I can't even imagine. The team is just sitting there waiting for the bot to finish, then waiting for someone to walk down a hallway.
Exactly. They digitized the dysfunction because they failed to ask the simple question, why do we still need a physical signature?
That is just an incredible failure of imagination, and it highlights all those red flags that experts tell us to look for, right?
It does. Redundant approvals, re-entering the same information into 5 different systems, artificial handoffs.
Or when the number of exceptions is way bigger than the number of standard cases.
That's a huge one. If you see those things, you have to just hit the brakes and fix the process first.
Which leads us to the successful approach, the fix then automate methodology.
This is so critical. It's a 4-step sequence. First, you have to question everything. Why does this step even exist? Is it a real rule or just a habit? What's the ideal outcome here?
Then you start cutting things out.
Step 2, eliminate before you automate. You have to be ruthless. Get rid of non-value-adding steps, delays, redundant checks. If it doesn't add value or meet a clear legal requirement, it's gone.
And then simplify what's left?
Step 3, simplify before you digitize. Reduce all the variations, standardize your data, make the decisions clear. You want 3 exception paths, not 47. And only then, after all that hard work, do you finally automate the optimal process.
And we saw a beautiful example of this with that healthcare clinic.
Oh, their story's fantastic. Their first attempt was a complete disaster, a perfect mirror image fallacy.
What were they trying to do?
They had this nightmarish patient scheduling system. Their first try at automation involved 12 different appointment types, manual insurance checks across multiple websites, separate calendars for every doctor.
It sounds messy just describing it.
It was a catastrophe.
Yeah.
It took 8 months, cost a fortune, and somehow made scheduling more confusing for everyone. It failed completely.
But the second try, they started with a whiteboard, not with software.
They questioned everything. They simplified those 12 appointment types down to just 3 standard categories.
Yeah.
They put everyone on one scheduling platform. And critically, they implemented real-time insurance verification during the online booking.
So they eliminated all that back-end manual work.
They streamlined the process down to its absolute essence. And once they did that, the automation part was actually pretty easy.
And the result?
Astonishing. Yeah. They now handle 300% more appointments with just 1 staff member instead of 3. And they did it in 6 weeks.
6 weeks versus the 8-month failure.
The difference wasn't the robot. It was the process design. Automation should be the reward you get for good process design, not a bandage for bad habits.
That's a powerful way to put it. Speaking of bad habits, let's move beyond just the process and talk about the fatal strategic mistakes companies make.
Right, because if process dysfunction is the engine of failure, strategic misalignment is the faulty chassis holding it all together.
And there are 3 common ones we saw. Let's start with the most tempting one, picking the tool first.
The technology-first approach. This happens all the time. A company sees a slick demo for a hot RPA tool at a conference, or they decide they must use AI for something.
The shiny object syndrome.
That's it. And then they spend months trying to force their messy, real-world business processes to fit into the box that the tool provides.
Which is completely backwards.
It's the inverse of the success story we just heard. You're letting the vendor's sales pitch dictate your inefficient outcome. If you buy a hammer, every problem looks like a nail, even when you really need a screwdriver.
Okay, mistake number 2 is about complexity. The perfection paralysis problem.
This is a deep, deep trap. It's when the team tries to automate every single possible exception. We talked about that onboarding process with 47 different exception paths.
Right, different states, different rules.
And they try to code for all of them. What happens is they burn through the entire budget and timeline just trying to handle edge cases that happen maybe 1% of the time. They never even get the standard process working.
The real problem was the complexity itself, which should have been simplified first.
Of course. When your exceptions outnumber your standard cases, you don't need more complex code. You need a new process.
And the third strategic mistake.
The set and forget syndrome. Treating automation like a one-time project. You deploy the bot, you declare victory, You walk away.
But the business is always changing.
Always. A supplier changes, a new regulation comes out, or, and this is huge for RPA, the user interface of an application gets updated. If you're not continuously optimizing that bot, it breaks. Or worse, it starts creating new inefficiencies. It becomes technical debt on day one.
This all leads directly to the human element. We know that something like 70% of big change programs fail in general. Automation just adds another layer of difficulty.
It really does. And there are two huge psychological challenges. The first is just the sheer visceral fear of job loss.
The robots are coming for our jobs narrative.
It's everywhere in the media. And that fear is real. We saw data from PwC that said around 20% of companies just decided to forget RPA initiatives entirely.
They just didn't want to deal with the internal fallout.
Exactly, to avoid the PR nightmare or the hit to morale.
So how do successful companies get around that?
They have to get out ahead of it with clear communication. The message has to be about augmentation, not replacement. The bots are here to take away the boring, repetitive, error-prone work so you can focus on more strategic, creative, human things. The bots facilitate routines. They don't destroy roles. They elevate them.
And the second psychological hurdle often comes from an unexpected place.
It does. It often comes from the IT department.
Really? Why them?
There's often this internal resistance from IT. They sometimes see RPA as immature and sloppy technology, like glorified desktop macros. Or they see it as gray IT that's trying to bypass all their security and governance rules.
Which, to be fair, is a valid concern for them.
It's a very valid concern, which means the counterargument has to be robust.
Yeah.
You have to show them that mature RPA is about complex ecosystems, deep security integrations, proper governance. It's a serious enterprise initiative, not just someone recording their clicks.
Beyond fear, there's the huge issue of unrealistic expectations.
Oh, this is a big one. Solution providers sometimes, they get a little optimistic. They suggest everything can be done super quickly and cheaply.
And that runs headfirst into the financial reality.
It does, because the big direct cost savings often depend entirely on a company's willingness to actually lay people off. If you decide not to do that, you have to remember that you're adding new cost licenses, maintenance infrastructure for the bots.
So the ROI gets a lot fuzzier. It's not, we saved $1 million in salary. It's, our people are now free to do higher value work.
And that's a much harder sell to a CFO who wants to see immediate headcount reduction. If you promise massive, instant savings without a clear plan for what those freed up employees are going to do, you are setting yourself up for failure.
We saw this play out perfectly with the T&E Challenge travel and expense automation.
It's a perfect microcosm of this whole problem because it touches everyone, and everyone has a different goal.
The traveler, the end user, just wants it to be easy and fast.
Of course. They're on the road, they're busy. The last thing they want is to fight with a clunky app to scan receipts. Submitting an expense report is not their core job.
But the finance department has a completely different set of priorities.
Totally different. Finance needs granular detail, strict compliance, audit trails. They need those 15 different spending codes. So if you design the system only for finance, it will be a nightmare for the traveler. Adoption will be terrible, and the whole project will fail. It's a communication challenge, not a coding one.
So solving this, it's not just about fixing one process. It requires a much more structured, top-down approach.
That's the ultimate conclusion. Successful automation has to live under the umbrella of a coherent enterprise IT strategy, a strategy that's deeply rooted in the business goals and constantly adapting to what's happening in the market.
The sources laid out 6 key dimensions that any good IT strategy has to cover.
Right. It forces that 360-degree view. You have strategic alignment, operational excellence, tech and infrastructure, customer and market engagement, transformation and change management, and sustainable and responsible IT.
So any automation project has to clearly map to those dimensions. It's not just about saving money. It's about how it helps with, say, customer engagement.
Exactly. And to manage that, you need specific governance structures. The sources really emphasize an automation operating model, or AOM. This needs top-down direction from the C-suite for vision and funding, but also bottom-up support from the business units.
And the C-suite delegates the execution to a Center of Excellence, or COE.
The COE is the critical orchestration layer. It sits right between the business units who have the problems and the IT function who has the infrastructure. The COE manages the pilots, the standards, the scale-ups, the whole life cycle.
Okay, a Center of Excellence. That sounds a little bureaucratic. Aren't you just creating another committee to slow everything down?
That's the risk, for sure. And it's a fair question. But the alternative is far, far worse. The COE is what stops the rise of gray IT.
Gray IT. That sounds like what happened in the early days of the cloud.
It's an excellent comparison. Back then, every department would go out and sign up for its own cloud service. You had no security standards, no interoperability, just chaos.
And decentralized automation is the same. Little islands of bots that can't talk to each other, can't handle a process that crosses departmental lines, and can never scale up to have a real enterprise-wide impact.
That's it. The COE is there to prevent that. It harmonizes the effort so that what Business Unit A builds can be reused by Business Unit B. It's an investment in sustainable scale.
Let's go back to the people side, stakeholder involvement. How early do they need to be brought in?
Before you even pick a vendor, before the process is even fully redesigned. This isn't a courtesy, it's a requirement.
And who needs to be at that table?
The obvious ones, IT, finance, operations, but also the ones people always forget. Legal, tax, HR, and most importantly, the actual end users who do this job every day.
Why are legal and tax so critical?
Because they own compliance. If your new automated process accidentally moves data across an international border, it shouldn't, or logs a transaction in a way that violates tax audit rules. You're looking at a massive, expensive rework right before you go live. You have to know the compliance rules for the new process up front.
And what about leadership's role? It's more than just signing the check.
Oh, much more. Executive champions have to be visible role models. They have to use the new system, talk about the new process. Their participation shows everyone else that this is a strategic priority, not just some IT fad that will disappear in a year.
But there's a crucial reminder here. You can't make everyone happy.
No, and you shouldn't try. Seeking universal satisfaction is a recipe for paralysis. Success is about managing the change, not eliminating all resistance. It's about clear communication, mandatory training, and getting the majority on board.
And one final point on coordination. IT has to be involved from day one.
Absolutely non-negotiable, especially with RPA. IT provides the infrastructure the bots run on, and eventually IT becomes the owner of the bot. They're responsible for its security, its maintenance.
Because a simple IT patch could break everything.
Right. It could ruin the entire business case overnight. Imagine SAP gets a security patch that moves a button on the screen by 2 pixels.
The bot breaks.
Instantly, the whole process stops. If IT isn't involved early and continuously, you can't anticipate and manage those dependencies. It's that simple.
Okay, to give our listener a full picture, let's run through the detailed typology of challenges that consultants see. We've covered process, but let's hit the big technical and resource-related ones.
Let's do it. On the technical side, beyond just picking the right software, the single biggest issue is the constant need to adjust the code because the systems it talks to are always changing.
So the stability of your automation is basically hostage to the IT department's release schedule.
It is. The bot's stability depends entirely on the stability of the system landscape. And that goes for external systems too. A bot scraping a supplier's website breaks the second they update their HTML. That kind of constant maintenance can destroy your ROI.
So unpredictable external instability. What else is on the technical checklist?
Systematic error handling is huge. Bots will fail. They'll hit an unexpected pop-up. You need an automated way to handle that and restart the process without a human having to step in. Otherwise, you're just trading one manual job for another.
And access control. I imagine that's a headache.
It's a major challenge. The bot needs permissions to do its job, but you want to follow the principle of least privilege. Managing that securely across dozens of systems is a huge, ongoing technical task.
Okay, now let's move to the resource-related challenges. This feels like the human side of technical debt.
That's a great way to put it. The main challenge is building your own internal expertise. Too many companies rely on expensive consultants for their first few bots.
And then they're stuck.
They're stuck. They're completely dependent. The consultants leave, and nobody internally knows how to maintain, manage, or build new automations. The costs just spiral.
So you have to build that muscle internally in parallel with the first project.
You have to. You need your own key users, your own developers. And just as importantly, you need people in the business units who really understand the processes.
Why is that so crucial?
Because they're the ones who guarantee that the pipeline of potential processes for automation is continuously filled. If that pipeline of good ideas dries up, the whole program just stalls. The COE ends up just maintaining a few old bots instead of driving real transformation.
We've spent a lot of time on process automation. Now we need to get into the really deep technical weeds of infrastructure as code and configuration as code. IAC and CAC.
Right. This is where automation moves from managing business tasks to managing the digital foundations of the entire company. And this is where we hear the most direct and visceral frustration from the DevOps teams.
The tools Ansible, Terraform, Kubernetes, they're revolutionary, but they come with their own set of deep-seated problems.
They do. And let's start with the language itself, specifically YAML. We saw some, let's just say, strong opinions about YAML.
Write-only programming was a phrase that came up.
It comes up a lot. It looks clean and simple, but it is notoriously unforgiving. The real nightmare begins when you have to embed a scripting language like Jinja 2 inside your YAML file to do any kind of complex logic.
Can you explain why that's so hard?
Well, YAML has its own really strict rules about quoting strings. Jinja 2, meanwhile, has its own syntax with double curly braces. Trying to get those two systems to play nicely, to pass the right characters through without one of them misinterpreting it, you end up in this hellscape of backslashes and quotes and just praying it works.
So you can write it once, but good luck debugging it 6 months later.
Exactly. The cognitive load on the developer is huge, which leads directly to bugs, delays, and project failure.
And beyond the language, there are bigger technical issues. Let's start with the existential threat to IAC state management and drift.
So tools like Terraform are stateful. They keep a critical file that's supposed to be the single source of truth about what your infrastructure looks like.
But it often isn't the truth, right?
It often isn't.
Yeah.
If a deployment fails halfway through, your real infrastructure no longer matches the state file. And even if it succeeds, over time, you get configuration drift. A sysadmin makes a quick manual change in production to fix an outage.
And boom, the state file is wrong.
It's out of date. And merging that drift back into the code, it's a drama. The tool doesn't know how to handle it safely. Often the only option is to just tear down the resource and rebuild it from the code, which you can't do if it's, say, your main production database.
This sounds exponentially worse in a big company.
It is. That's the cross-system complexity problem. Project A defines the database. Project B defines the app that uses it. If Project A makes a change without telling Project B, the whole system can just fall over. The order of operations is absolutely critical, and these tools don't always make it easy.
And there's a huge security issue here, too, the credential conundrum.
This is the one account to rule them all problem. Tools like Ansible often need really broad, powerful permissions, sometimes root access, to do their job across hundreds of servers.
So if that one configuration server gets compromised,
the attacker gets the keys to the entire kingdom. It's a massive security liability. It's an anti-pattern in modern security, which is all about least privilege and temporary credentials. But these tools often force you into this dangerous model.
So what's the solution? It sounds like it boils down to a lack of abstraction.
That's the consensus from the advanced users. The tools don't abstract away enough of the complexity. You're still writing very low-level configuration. What's needed are better high-level abstractions where you can just say, I need a high-availability database, and the tool handles the details using sane, intelligent defaults.
Okay. We have covered the pitfalls from process design all the way down to code execution. So how do successful organizations govern and measure this whole journey?
They have to adopt that high-level strategic perspective we talked about. They use that comprehensive enterprise IT strategy with the 6 dimensions to make sure everything is aligned.
Let's just quickly reiterate those 6.
Strategic alignment, operational excellence, technology and infrastructure, customer and market engagement, transformation and change management, and sustainable and responsible IT.
And they use a maturity model to guide their progress through those dimensions.
Exactly. An enterprise IT strategy maturity model. It has 5 stages, from initial to innovative. And the key is you don't try to jump straight to level 5. That's a recipe for failure.
So what's the right approach?
You do an honest assessment of where you are now across all 6 dimensions. Then you pick a realistic target, maybe getting to level 3 integrated, and you focus meticulously on improving everything you need to do to get there. It's a disciplined, continuous improvement journey.
So once you're organized, you need to prove it's working. We know that simple ROI based on headcount is tricky. So what are the better ways to measure success?
You start by setting SMART goals, and then you use a mix of 5 effective measurement methods.
Number 1 is ROI, but a more detailed version.
Yes. You compare all the costs, licenses, maintenance against all the savings, both direct, like reduced labor, and indirect, like productivity gains.
Number 2, KPIs.
Key performance indicators. You have to track quantifiable metrics like process cycle time, how long it takes an invoice to get paid, and error rates. If it's not faster or more reliable, it failed.
Number 3 is about productivity.
Right. Process efficiency and productivity metrics. Are employees actually reallocating their saved time to higher value activities? Or are they just on Facebook? You have to measure that.
Number 4, customer experience.
Yep. Net promoter score, customer feedback, resolution time. Automation should make things better for the customer, whether that customer is internal or external.
And finally, number 5, employee satisfaction.
You have to monitor morale. Is automation empowering your workforce and reducing burnout? Or is it just creating new frustrations?
That's a great list, but there's one final crucial distinction in how to measure this, and it ties all the way back to our very first point.
This is the secret sauce. The dual tracking approach. You must track metrics for process optimization first. You have to prove, with data, that you've improved the process manually before you even start automating.
And then separately, you track the automation itself.
Exactly. Then you track automation success, metrics, implementation speed, bot reliability, uptime. If your process optimization numbers aren't getting better first, your automation project is already doomed. You're just measuring how quickly your digitized dysfunction is failing.
We started this deep dive with that alarming statistic. 70% of automation projects fail, costing billions. But what we found is actually kind of encouraging.
It is, because the failure isn't inherent to the technology. The tech works.
The common thread, from RPA all the way to IAC, is that you cannot code your way out of a broken process, poor governance, or misaligned stakeholders.
Success requires treating automation as a fundamental change management initiative, not just a technical deployment.
And that transformation, fixing the process, getting people on board, setting realistic goals, that's where the real value is, long before the first line of code is ever written.
Since studies show that 37% of project failures trace back to a lack of defined objectives, and 70% of change programs fail due to human resistance, the critical question for you, the listener, is this. For your next automation project, are you treating it as a purely technical deployment, a simple software installation? Or are you treating it as a fundamental change management initiative, led by clear, measurable business outcomes and rigorous process optimization? That single decision determines whether you end up with transformational success or just a faster digitized dysfunction.
Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are wading into a truly frustrating topic. The astonishingly high failure rate of modern automation projects.
And we're talking about the whole spectrum here.
Everything. Robotic process automation, or RPA, sophisticated AI initiatives, and even things that should be straightforward, like infrastructure as code.
Right. For years, automation's been sold as this silver bullet for efficiency. It promises speed, accuracy, huge cost savings.
And businesses have been buying in big time.
Oh, absolutely. The stakes are just enormous. We're talking about businesses collectively pouring over $12 billion a year into these efforts.
$12 billion. And here is the jaw dropper that should stop every executive in their tracks. Approximately 70% of those projects, they just fail to deliver the expected results.
70%. I mean, just think about that. For every 3 projects a company starts, on average, 2 of them are effectively flushing money right down the drain.
It gets worse, doesn't it?
It does. If you start to break it down by the type of technology, the numbers become truly alarming. For, complex IT automation or those big cutting-edge AI projects.
The ones that get all the press.
Exactly. For those, failure rates are often cited as high as 90%. 90. Even RPA, which is supposed to be the easy stuff, the low-hanging fruit.
Yeah.
It still fails to deliver about half the time.
When people hear these figures, the immediate reaction is to blame the usual suspects.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, the budget must have run over, or the tech was just too complex, or maybe, we just didn't have the leadership buy-in.
The standard excuses. But we challenged that.
We did. We dove deep into the source material on this.
And the core finding, and this should really transform how every leader approaches automation, is this. The primary reasons for failure are overwhelmingly organizational, procedural, and just fundamentally human.
Not the technology.
It's almost never the technology. The automation tech itself, the RPA bot, the Terraform script, the AI model, it often works perfectly. But the flawed system it's running on, well, it just multiplies the existing dysfunction.
Okay, let's unpack this. This brings us to the central, shocking revelation we found across almost all our sources.
This is the big one.
The single biggest reason projects crash and burn is this almost irresistible impulse to automate broken processes instead of fixing them first. You are, quite literally, digitizing dysfunction.
The statistics on this are just. They're staggering. Industry analysis estimates that 73% of failed automation projects fall squarely into this broken process automation trap.
So 3/4 of the time, the problem wasn't a bad robot, it was a bad blueprint.
A bad blueprint. That's a perfect way to put it.
So what makes this mistake so seductive? Why do people keep doing it?
It's the logic of the automate what we do mentality, or what some experts